Good morning, everyone. Before we begin, I want you to imagine a world where your entire identity, your job, your house, your bank account is based on how well you can flatter someone in power. In our modern world, we call that toxic networking. In 1608, William Shakespeare called it the love test. Today, John and I are going to teach you King Lear, our view of the play. Here are some key differences. King Lear, as a protagonist of Shakespeare who gives up his powers. When we compare it to the other plays like Macbeth, the protagonists mostly care about power and taking more. But however, King Lear immediately starts with dividing his kingdom amongst his children, so showing more empathy. Tragedies. Two tragedies happening simultaneously. In most of Shakespeare's own plays, he focuses on one plot, but here we have two, between one being King Lear and his daughters, and the other one being Gloucester and his sons. Justice. There is no real karma. The one who is the most honest is Cordelia and still gets punished. King Lear, even after learning his lesson and becoming a better man, he still gets killed. And it's not just for the good, it's also the bad as well. Some comments and essays on the play. Families of terms, clustered about some root ideas, and ideas such as sight, or disease, or age, or sex. Stephen Booth on the greatness of King Lear. King Lear is a tragedy which, above all others, feels as though its meaning changes as the viewer ages. King Lear devises Act 1. King Lear decides to retire and recklessly divides his kingdom among his daughters based on a public love test, resulting in the banishment of the honest Cordelia and the loyal Earl of Kent.
By Act 2, Lear's authority is systematically stripped away by Goneril and Regan, who reduce his retinue and humiliate him until he is forced out into a violent brewing storm. Meanwhile, Edmund's power grows as he successfully maneuvers himself into a position of political influence by betraying his own family.
Act 3 sees Lear descend into full madness on the storm-swept heath, where he finally gains empathy for the poor naked wretches who have no shelter from the elements. Simultaneously, Gloucester is brutally and physically blinded by Cornwall and Regan for the crime of helping the king, a visceral consequence of his previous metaphorical blindness toward his sons.
In Act 4, the broken Gloucester is saved from suicidal despair by a disguised Edgar, while the mad Lear is eventually found and tenderly reunited with Cordelia and the French army. As the characters prepare for a climatic battle, the villains, Goneril and Regan, begin to destroy each other out of jealousy over their shared attraction to the villainous Edmund.
Act 5 concludes the tragedy with a devastating battle, where the French are defeated, leading to a rapid succession of deaths for almost every major character. Though Edmund is eventually killed in a duel by Edgar, his order to execute Cordelia is carried out. The play ends with Lear howling in grief over her dead body before dying of a broken heart, leaving the survivors to face a bleak and exhausted future. Main characters: King Lear, the aging king of the Britain and the protagonist. Here we have King Lear, the king, and Cordelia, his youngest daughter and the one who is married to the king of France. She is the honest one. Earl of Kent, the one who always helps the King Lear. Fool, who serves King Lear while hitting him in soft spots. Goneril and Regan, the other two children of King Lear, and Earl of Gloucester, Edgar, who is his legitimate son, and Edmund, who is bastard son. King Lear. the aging king of Britain and the protagonist. He divides his kingdom based on a flawed law test and eventually loses his mind after being cast out by his daughters. He dies of a grief while holding the body of his deceased daughter, Cordelia. Most iconic quote: I am a man, more sinned against than sinning. This marks a crucial moment of self-pity and emerging self-awareness. Lear begins to recognize he is a victim of his daughter's cruelty, even if he hasn't yet fully grasped his own role in the tragedy.
Cordelia, Lear's youngest and most faithful daughter. She refuses to participate in the hyperbolic flattery of the love test, leading to her banishment. What happens by the end? She is executed by hanging while in prison, despite Lear's attempts to save her. Most iconic quote, I'm happy that I cannot leave my heart into my mouth. I love your majesty, according to my bond, no more, no less. This is the play's catalyst, her commitment to plainness over performative flattery triggers Lear's rage and the subsequent collapse of the kingdom.
The Fool. Lear's court jester and honest companion. He uses riddles and songs to highlight Lear's foolishness in giving away his power to his ungrateful daughters. He disappears from the play after Act 3, Lear's final lines being, "And my poor fool is hanged," suggest a tragic end, though it is often interpreted as a reference to Cordelia. Most iconic quote: Thou shouldst not have been old till thou had been wise. This stinging critique summarizes the central tragedy of Lear's character. He has attained the physical age of an elder without gaining the wisdom or emotional maturity required of a king.
Edward, the illegitimate son of the Earl of Gloucester. He plots against his father and brother to secure an inheritance and manipulates both Cornelius and Regan for power. He is killed in a duel by his brother Edgar, but attempts a good deed by trying to rescue the other in order to kill Cornelia before he dies. Most iconic quote. The wheel is come full circle by the year. Spoken as he lies dying, this quote acknowledges the inevitability of fate and justice. The momentum of his tale has finally returned to Prussia.
The Earl of Gloucester, a nobleman whose story of betrayal by his sons mirrors Lear's. He is blinded by Cornwall and Regan for his loyalty to Lear and is led to safety by his disguised son, Edgar. What happens by the end is he dies off stage when his heart bursts smilingly after Edgar reveals his true identity. Most iconic quote: I have no way, and therefore want no eyes. I stumbled when I saw. Why? This paradox highlights the play's theme of spiritual sight. Gloucester realized that he was blind to truth when he had physical eyes, and he only sees clearly now that he is physically blind.
Edgar, Gloucester's legitimate son and survivor of this tragedy. He adopts the disguise of a mad dealer to survive and eventually redeems his family name. By the end, he survives the war, kills Edmund, and is left to help restore order to the real nation. Most iconic quote, Edgar, I Nottingham. This represents the ultimate loss of identity. To survive a world combat, Edgar must completely erase his former self and descend to the lowest level of human existence.
Tia refuses to participate in Lear's public display of flattery, stating that her love for her father is simply that of a daughter's duty. This passage is the big bang of the play. For Act 1, it establishes the theme of appearance versus reality. Goneril and Regan offer hollow words to gain land, while Cordelia's truth is perceived as rebellion. On a broader level, this quote highlights Lear's tragic flaw: his inability to distinguish between performance and genuine affection. It sets the entire tragedy in motion by leading to the banishment of the only person truly loyal to the king, proving that in Lear's Britain, blunt honesty is a punishable offense.
As his daughters demand he give up his remaining rights, Lear argues that he would not require more than just the bare minimum for survival. With an actual, this code represents the climax of Lear's domestic operation. One of the reasons looking to speak steeply of his status, but Lear realizes that his rights are the last remaining symbol of his identity. This passage is relevant to the whole fact because it marks the transition from historical breakdown by comparing them to beasts and foreshadows his own journey into the storm. That he actually sees himself as nothing more than a ordinary man.
While weathering the heat in a violent storm, Lear suddenly feels empty for the homeless and realizes he was a negligent king. This is the turning point for Lear's character in Act 3. Amidst the chaos of the pitiless storm, his ego finally cracks open to reveal a burgeoning sense of social justice. This passage is vital to the play because it humanizes the tyrant. It suggests that madness, paradoxically, has brought Lear the clarity he lacked when he was sane and powerful. The storm is both a literal meteorological event and a metaphor for the internal upheaval required to strip away a person's pride.
After being abandoned, Rochester reflects on the cruelty of the universe, where suffering is merely experienced pain or higher powers. This contrasts the atmosphere of Paris, Salvador, of course, and the pain of the story is one of the most iconic things because it's so much between the tragedy I identify as a violence or suffering comes from violence. This tension between city being and exactly cruel wilderness rivers is the central philosophical conflict that allows the finance of
After the deaths of Lear and his daughters, Edgar addresses the survivors, urging them to prioritize honest emotion over political decorum. These final lines of the play serve as a somber coda to Act Five's bloodbath. They bring the play full circle by returning to Cordelia's initial struggle, the difficulty of speaking what we feel. The quote acknowledges that the survivors are young and diminished, suggesting that the era of grand kings like Lear and the massive suffering they endured is over. It provides a grim resolution, suggesting that while order may be restored, the trauma of the sad time has left the kingdom permanently scarred.
Section 4. Theme 1. Identity. Instance 1. Lear used this to discuss the shock of losing power. When Lear's daughters begin to ignore his comments, he experiences a crisis of identity. He is realizing that without his crown and his knights, he is no longer recognized as the man he used to be. Instance 2. Edgar. Talking about forced transformation, Edgar is a nobleman who must become a nothing, a beggar, to escape a death sentence. This shows that social status is just a mask that can be removed in an instant. Instance 3. Lear. This is the ultimate realization on the heat. Lear sees Edgar and realizes that humans are just animals once you take away their clothes and titles. He tears off his own clothes to prove that he is now equal to the lowest beggar.
Team 2. Sight. Instance 1. Spiritual version of Kent. Kent's plea for Lear to see better established the paradox of vision. Even though Lear has perfect physical sight, he is spiritually blind to the toxic flattery of his elder daughters. This instance proves that pride can act as a veil, preventing those in power from seeing the truth that is right in front of them. Instance 2. Gloucester. The irony of blindness. Gloucester's story provides the most literal example of the theme. He had to lose his eyes to gain spiritual clarity. His stumbling, while he could see, represents his lack of moral judgment. His physical blindness becomes a gateway to the truth, allowing him to finally recognize the loyalty of Edgar and the treachery of Edmund. Instance 3. The Reason in Madness of Lear. The instance showcases the trope of the wise fool. As Lear's mind breaks, his internal sight improves. He realizes that the justice system and the social hierarchy are corrupt and see-through. His madness allows him to speak truths that would have been censored or ignored when he was a sane, guarded king.
Team 3. Nature. Instance 1. Lear. Use this to show how Lear views betrayal as a biological crime. He doesn't just call Gonel mean, he calls her unnatural and asks nature to prevent her from ever having children, believing she has broken the fundamental laws of life. Instance 2. Lear. Contextualize the storm as a mirror. Lear finds the thunder and rain easier to handle than his daughters because the weather never promised to love him. He views the storm as a more honest force than his own children. Instance 3. Albany. This provides the moral warning of the play. Albany is disgusted by how the sisters treated their father. He argues that if children continue to synthesize the relationship between King Lear, Macbeth, and the trial, we must look at where their narrative arcs intersect and where their unique philosophies diverge.
The intersection. Lear's world is built on the divine right of kings and the bond of family. Where his daughters break this bond, he is thrust into a literal and mental wilderness where his identity as a king no longer exists. Macbeth's world is governed by the great chain of being. By murdering the king, he shatters the natural order, leading to a reality where fears foul, and he becomes an alien to his own consequences. Mr. K begins in a world of rigid logic and banking. His arrest introduces him to an unwritten law that follows no logic, displacing him from his comfortable life into a nightmare where he is guilty simply by existing. The shared core, all three characters end up as unaccommodated men. They are stripped of their titles and certainties, forced to confront a universe that is either indifferent or actively hostile to their survival.
1. King Lear. Familial ungratefulness and biological betrayal. While Macbeth is about political treason and the trial is about bureaucratic coldness, King Lear is unequivocally centered on the pain of family. The primary villains are not witches or a hidden court, but one's own children. The play explores the unnatural act of a child turning against a parent, treating it as a cosmic catastrophe that causes the stars to fall and the earth to shake. 2. Macbeth, the psychology of guilt and ambition. Macbeth is different because it shows how a killer is slowly destroyed by their own guilt. Unlike Lear, who is a victim of his own poor choices, or Joseph K., who is a victim of a system. Macbeth is the architect of his own destructions. The play is a psychological study of how blood will have blood, focusing on the hallucinations and insomnia that result from a corrupted soul, a level of self-inflicted mental torture not found in the other two texts. 3. The trial. The absurdity of modern bureaucracy. Kafka's work differentiates itself by removing the grandeur of tragedy and replacing it with the absurd. The difference in Shakespeare, characters die for big reasons and power, land, or revenge. In the trial, Joseph K. dies for a reason that is never explained. There is no storm on the heat, or ghost in the banquet hall. There are only endless hallways, confusing paperwork, and a total lack of closure. It explores the horror of a world where there is no high king or god to appeal to, only a middle manager.
King Lear and Macbeth, The Cause of Nature. In both plays, when the natural order of society is broken, the literal weather goes into a frenzy. The violent storm in King Lear represents the king's mental state and his daughter's cruelty. Similarly, in Macbeth, unnatural events like horses eating each other and dark days occur because the rightful king was killed. The Outsider. The trial is different because the world of Mr. K is cold, urban, and industrial. There are no grand storms or symbolic animals. The environment is a boring, confusing city, which makes his struggle feel lonely rather than cosmic. The intersection between King Lear and the trial, the loss of identity. The connection between both Lear and Mr. K start as a powerful men who think they understand the rules of their world. By the end, they are both reduced to nothing. Lear loses his crown, his knights, and his clothes, eventually seeing himself as just a bare-forked animal. Mr. K is slowly stripped of his job, his reputation, and his dignity, until he is executed like a dog. Macbeth is different because Macbeth never loses his identity. He knows exactly who he is and what he has done. Even at the end, he dies fighting as a soldier and a king, rather than a confused victim. The intersection between Macbeth and the trial, the inevitability of fate. Both Macbeth and Mr. K feel like they are caught in a trap. They cannot a trap that they cannot escape. Macbeth feels trapped by the witch's prophecies and his own actions. Mr. K, on the other hand, is trapped by a legal system that never tells him what he did wrong but refuses to let him go. Both characters spend the entire story trying to fight a destiny that has already been decided for them. King Lear is different because Lear has many changes to his fixed life. If he had listened to Cordelia or Kent at the start, or if he had stayed sane, the tragedy could have been avoided. His fate is caused by his own specific choices, not a trap from the start.
Of being trapped in a system that doesn't care about the individual, the idea of the law being an invisible, confusing force that judges a person without ever explaining the crime feels incredibly relevant to modern feelings regarding digital surveillance or cold bureaucracy. King Lear disranks second because the pain of feeling engaged is a universal human experience. The way Lear's daughter turn of him after he gives them his power is a deep personal trail that feels very grounded in human biology and family dynamics. Macbeth's while the theme of ambition is powerful, it feels like a dark fairy tale. Most readers will never have to decide whether to assimilate a head of state to fulfill a prophecy, making it feel less applicable to daily life than the other two. The trial Joseph K is the most engaging protagonist because he is an ordinary everyman. He isn't the king or a warrior. He is a bank clerk who suddenly finds himself in a nightmare. His frustration and his attempts to stay logical, the illogical world make him very easy to root for as he navigates the confusing court system. King Lear is a complex character to engage with because he starts as a vain and arrogant ruler who treats Cordelia unfairly. However, his journey into madness on the heat and his eventual humility make his character arc one of the most moving in literature as he realizes his own insignificance. Macbeth is a fascinating villain protagonist, but since he actually chooses to commit evil acts and murders, it is harder to feel the same level of empathy for him as the do for the innocent Joseph K. or the suffering King Lear. Narrative atmosphere, the trial with the Kafkaesque atmosphere full of dark ethics, endless hallways, and whispering officials creates a unique sense of suffocating dread. It feels like a psychological maze that never ends, which is more gripping than a standard outdoor setting. King Lear, the atmosphere of the wild night and the pitiless storm is iconic and epic. It effectively shows the chaos of nature, matching the chaos in Lear's mind as he battles the elements. It is powerful, but it feels grand and tragically richer than intimate and creepy. Macbeth, the atmosphere is full And for you filled with witches and ghosts, it is excellent for a horror team play, but it doesn't quite match the realistic daily tension found in the cramped offices and courtrooms of trial. While King Lear is a masterpiece of family tragedy and emotional breakdown, the trial stands out as my favorite. Its ability to turn a boring bank clerk's life into a terrifying high stakes mystery about the meaning of justice makes it the most intellectually rewarding experience of the three texts.
Macbeth is my most favorite among three of them. This text is my favorite because of the fascinating power dynamic in the first half of the play. Watching Lady Macbeth dominate the narrative by challenging her husband's masculinity and pushing him to be a man makes the story much more intriguing to watch. Her psychological control over him adds a layer of domesticated drama that makes the political murder feel more personal. The trial, on the other hand, this ranks high because it captures the modern feeling of being trapped in a system that doesn't care about the individual. The idea of the law as an invisible, invisible, confusing force that judges you without explaining your crime feels incredibly relevant to modern bureaucracy. King Lear, this ranks lower for me because while filial ingratitude is a universal theme, it feels less like a mystery and more like a long, slow descent into misery. Secondly, Macbeth is an engaging protagonist specifically because of how he is manipulated by Lady Macbeth. Watching him struggle between his consequence and his wife's dominance makes him a compelling tragic pawn. The stakes felt high to me personally because I was working through a difficult academic test to secure a higher grade. That pressure to perform and meet a high standard made me feel more connected to Macbeth's internal struggle to live up to the expectations placed upon him. While I was reading the trial, I felt a strong connection to Mr. K because he is an everyman facing a high stakes situation he doesn't fully understand, much like a student trying to navigate complex grading criteria. He is constantly pressured by an authority that demands perfection. In King Lear, difficulty to engage with at first because had difficulty to engage with at first because his problems are caused by his own vanity, while his madness on the heath is moving. His initial arrogance makes it harder to root for him compared to a man being pushed by his ambitious wife or the clerk fighting a system. Thirdly, Macbeth has an atmosphere in the first half of the play as electric because of the tension between Macbeth and his wife. The claustrophobic feeling of their castle, combined with the foul weather and the presence of the witches, creates a perfect backdrop for the Lady Macbeth's cold-blooded planning. In trial, the Kafkaesque atmosphere of dark attics and endless hallways creates a unique sense of suffocating dread. It feels like a psychological maze, which I find much more gripping than a standard outdoor setting. In King Lear, the atmosphere of the pitiless storm is epic and grand. It effectively mirrors the chaos in Lear's mind, but it lacks the quiet, creeping tension that makes the indoor scenes of Macbeth and the trial so haunting. So, while the trial is a brilliant study of systemic absurdity, Macbeth is my top choice. Ooh. The way Lady Macbeth dominates the early parts of the play makes the drama intense and unpredictable. Furthermore, my personal focus on finishing a test for a better grade allowed me to relate to high pressure environment of the play, making Macbeth's stressed-out journey towards his doom the most engaging experience of the three.
King Lear in 2026 remains a vital academic and personal pursuit because it serves as a mirror for the complexities of modern human relationships and the fragility of social structures. While written centuries ago, the exploration of power, aging, and the breakdown of communication resonates and deeply in our current era. The play is particularly relevant today as we navigate a world where appearance versus reality is a constant struggle. In an age of digital performance, Lear's demand for public display of love and his inability to see the truth behind his daughter's empty flattery reflects our modern obsessions with outward validations over genuine connections. Furthermore, the play's focus on a leader losing touch with reality and his people provides a stark warning about the dangers of echo chambers and isolated leadership. Connection to global issues. The global aging crisis and elder care. King Lear directly addresses the unnatural friction that can occur when power shifts between generations. In 2026, many nations are facing an aging population crisis. The play highlights the vulnerability of the elderly and the potential for filial vegetate when parents become dependent on their children. Reflective point. O'Neill and Reagan attempt to strip Lear of his rights and his dignity, mirrors modern debates about the social and economic problem of an aging demographic and whether they provide our elders with true respect or ordinarily the bare minimum for survival.
Climate instability and human displacement. The pitiless storm on the heath is more than just a theatrical device. It represents nature's indifference to human suffering and total collapse of security. As global climate patterns become increasingly unpredictable, the image of a once powerful leader reduced to a houseless wanderer in a storm is a powerful metaphor for climate-driven displacement. Lear's realization that he has taken too little care of the poor naked wretches who have no shelter from the storm serves as a call for social empathy. It forces 2026 audience to confront the global issues of how those in power often ignore the most vulnerable until they themselves are forced to experience the harsh reality of an inhospitable environment. King Lear is not merely a historical artifact, it is a lens through which we can examine our treatment of the vulnerable, our definition of truth, and our relationship with the natural world. By studying Lear's descent, we gain insight into the empathy required to prevent such tragedies in our own global society. This was all from our presentation. Thank you for giving us some time and thank you for listening. I'm Kerem and this is John. Thank you.
Thank you.